Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Lethal Venom podcast. This is a show where I talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth, no lies told. Today's episode, I have a special guest with me. I have Mr. Rob Wheeler. He is a Navy veteran who served for 10 years and is as well as a former federal police officer who served for 17 years law enforcement. And today he's just going to tell me a little bit about his history and learn about he also is the founder of a company called Battlefitted, which we will talk about more later, and we're just going to do a little bit of a Q&A with him. Mr. Wheeler, it's an honor to have you and thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it and look forward to our conversation.
So if you could just tell me a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so a little bit about me. I joined the Navy in 1997. I joined the Navy to piss off my dad, and it didn't work. So that's kind of a fun thing. Growing up, I really didn't have much direction or purpose in life, I would say, and I kind of was the guy or kid that figured I would stay in mom and dad's house forever and just kind of leech off of them. And after I got kicked out of school academically and lost my scholarships and everything, my dad would literally kick open my door every day at 5 a.m. before he went to his business and say, join the Navy. So I was like, F you, dad, I'm going to join the Navy. And like I said, it didn't work. So I served in the United States Navy for 10 years, seven of which was as a military police officer. And I got out due to medical reasons. I had various injuries from my time in service as a military police officer. And as soon as I got out, there was just a real struggle to find my identity and who I was. And a lot of times, as veterans, when we get out of the military, we automatically lose our purpose, our structure, our routine. It's a very frustrating thing. So, me being a military police officer, I decided to go into law enforcement work. And that wasn't very good because I took a bunch of trauma and pain and different issues from one job into the next job. And that carried over and spilled out into my first marriage, which ended in divorce and mental health issues and all kinds of craziness. And in 2018, I left law enforcement to open my own gym. I opened my own strength and conditioning gym where I ran that for 4 years. Unfortunately, due to COVID, I lost everything. That put me in a deeper, darker depression. And one day I just kind of had a wake up call and said, enough's enough, and kind of dove headfirst into personal development and found my purpose and my meaning and my identity as Coach Rob and who I am today.
You talk a little bit about how you've overcome PTSD and anxiety. How do you personally overcome that?
Honestly, like you don't totally 100% overcome it. Now, I still have bad days once in a while, but obviously I have a lot more good days than bad days. And it has to do with anybody that has, we all have trauma. Most everybody, especially in the US, has some form of trauma, whether it's childhood trauma or being bullied in school or, being in the military, first responder, whatever. And everybody's trauma is obviously different, and how a lot of us deal with that is obviously different. And most of the time, we push the trauma down or the bad things away, and we don't ever heal from it or deal with it head on. And that just creates problems and issues in our life. And we realize that, man, we feel jacked up, we feel like horrible, we don't operate well in society. So I never overcame it, but I decided that through a mindset shift, like, hey, I can't feel negative all the time. I can't say life sucks all the time. I can't say I hate everything all the time, because I truly believe what you speak out to in existence actually happens. So I had to start thinking of other ways to deal with stuff. So for me, that was practicing gratitude initially. Every night before I go to bed, I think of three things I'm thankful for. I either pray about it or speak to the universe about it. And then when I wake up, I always say I'm going to have a good day. Now, what happens is, let's say I wake up late or I miss a workout, and where it would usually make me throw what I call an adult temper tantrum, I just say I'm going to have a good day. And I keep saying that over and over. And it allows you to deal with things a little more clearly. You have to kind of figure out what you want to put your energy into, right? So, do you want to put your energy into being mad because someone cut you off, or do you want to put your energy into being a better person?
You talk a lot about your journey as a Navy veteran and federal officer. Have there been moments where you've been put in situations where it comes too much to where you think back and say, did I make the right decision?
As a police officer, both in the Navy and federally and in the state of Florida where I'm at. I always stood by my decisions. One thing I was luckily to be, I think, or feel like I was a very good police officer. I always gave people respect that they deserved. Now, obviously, you always have situations where you deal with somebody and they're just a piece of crap or a bad guy and they're not going to respond appropriately to your commands or how you're speaking to them. But I always just tried to reason with people. People at the end of the day are humans. Everybody's going through something. I was never the type of police officer that just yell and scream and, put my hands on them or tell them, you do exactly what I say. No, I would try to be logical and reason with people first. And I've always stood behind my decisions. I truly have. Now, the bad part of law enforcement, both in the military and in the federal or private sector or local sector. It's just seeing the bad stuff and seeing the bad stuff over and over again. The domestic violence, the child abuse, suicides. When I lost my gym in 2018, the wife and I were trying to discuss and decide like what's next, what was next for me. So I went and got state certified in Florida and I went to a police department where I work. And I was only there for 4 months because the amount of bad guys I dealt with, I saw a young man take his life. The stuff I dealt with mentally, it just was too much. And I didn't want to be in that profession anymore. Even in Florida where I'm at, it's like a pro law enforcement state. So you don't run into too many like I hate cops type of people. But mentally, it was just too overwhelming at that point and I had to leave.
You are the co-founder or the creator of Battle Fitted. What inspired you to create the Battle Fitted brand and the Battle Harder podcast?
So the Battle Fitted brand actually started with clothing. I always had like an artistic background. I do graphic design. I do my own artwork and everything. I'm a huge nerd. You can see in the background all the Star Wars stuff. I love Star Wars and Marvel and DC, and it's been spilled over into my life so much that I wanted a clothing brand. So I originally started with the clothing brand, and I would go to fitness events and gyms and different places and kind of hustle the gear. But then as I was building the brand and building the identity of Battle Fitted, I knew I wanted it to be more. So when I started becoming a personal development coach, and I decided to start the Battle Harder podcast. The Battle Harder podcast is all about storytelling. I just want to be a storyteller. Back in the day before we had TV or radio, like stories were important. And so having people that come on my show and talk about how they overcame adversity, neuroscientists, mental health professionals to give us tips and tricks on how to live better, veterans, first responders on how they deal with their day to day. It just gives me that opportunity to tell people stories and give them a place to vent, a mouthpiece, something to share whatever they want to share. Kind of similar to what you're doing too. I just stay more in a niche specific area, but essentially just letting people speak.
What does turning pain into progress mean to you?
That is the ability to take life's issues, problems, dramas, traumas, and instead of looking at it negatively, using that as fuel or the fire to become the best version of yourself. At the end of the day, we all have one life to live, and we know that. And why are you going to waste time being less than exceptional? So you might as well do everything in your power to become the best version of yourself.
Why do you believe structure and discipline are essential for mental and emotional healing?
That is an amazing question. And the thing that I've learned through my own experiences and my own journey with the stuff I've dealt through is when you have structure, so we know that whatever we do, consistency is key to be successful. Consistency breeds discipline, and discipline breeds progress. So the structure part of your day-to-day routine is very important. But I learned firsthand that when I was trying to become better and trying to become what I essentially say 1% better each and every day, that stacks up wins across the board. And when we stack up those wins across the board, we have more good days than bad. And that's what it's all about. So that's why the structure and the mindset work, and what I always tell people is have a limitless belief system, not a limiting belief system, is necessary to overcome, or not even overcome, but better apt to deal with the situations that we go through in life.
How does fitness play a role in your personal development coaching and mindset transformation?
Well, I like to tell people I think fitness saved my life. when I was going through my depression and all the feels and the mental health issues, I blew up to just over 300 pounds. And I was running my very first like mud run ever. I never done a mud run before. This was like in 2012. And my buddy was a professional photographer, and he decided to come along and take all the photos of the run. And I saw these pictures and I saw that I had man boobs and I had a gut. And I remember struggling. You could see the look on my face of despair of like, why did I do this race? And I knew that as a veteran with injuries, as a cop with injuries, knee injuries, back injuries, asthma, the mental health issues, like everything that the military gave me that was bad, if I didn't do something to live a healthier lifestyle, my life would literally implode. And I truly do believe that because I take fitness as a priority, and that's the first pillar of my three pillar coaching system. It has not got rid of my injuries, but it has kept them to the point where I continue to walk upstairs. You know, I'm 48 years old. I want to continue to be mobile. I think losing our mobility is one of the scariest things that can occur. I want to be able to carry groceries. I want to be able to play with my 13-year-old son if he wants to run around. I want to be able to continue to do the things to be mobile and fit and in shape as long as possible.
For my listeners, I have like pictures of what he looks like, and he does look like he can kick some ass. I will say that.
Thank you. I'm not that violent though.
I was gonna say he looks innocent, but it looks like if you mess with him, he could kick some butt. How do you help veterans and first responders reconnect with purpose after service?
So that's a great question. A lot of times we're so used to structure and discipline and routine. And when a veteran gets out and a first responder quits their job or loses their job, essentially you lose that overnight. It just disappears. And that creates a thing of hopelessness, of loss, the mental health issues. And I think for anybody as a person, you have to have purpose. If you don't have a purpose, you kind of run around with your head up your butt and confused and just kind of going through the motions of life. Who wants to go through just the motions of life? So by giving them the fitness, that's essentially putting the warrior back in the fight. I have a really I'll say hate's a strong word, but I hate fat cops. I hate fat first responders because our duty is to be there for the safety of the public. And you can't do your job if you're severely overweight and you can barely get in your patrol car or your fire engine or whatever. If you want to live, if you want to survive in a fight or an emergency situation, you have to be in shape. So giving warriors back their purpose through fitness first, essentially what that creates is when someone starts to fix their nutrition and their fitness and their habits, you start to feel better, you start to look better. And when you look better, mentally you feel better. And then I give you mindset tips and tricks like journaling, practicing gratitude, trying to change your belief system, tracking your emotional triggers. And that's what works on the trauma part of it. And then the discipline to just continue working with yourself when our time is done, because I don't want to have a client forever. I want them to be self-sufficient. So just putting warriors back in the fight, fitness is a huge part of that: healthy eating, nutrition, a healthy lifestyle.
What are some practical tools or routines people can use to build resilience in their daily lives?
When things get crazy or scary, so like I said, you have to be able to control and regulate your emotions, right? A lot of times that's how people get in trouble, whether you're yelling at the store clerk because they didn't ring up an item properly, or the person cut you off because they were on their cell phone, or whatever. You have to decide emotionally to have emotional intelligence and decide what's going to make you happy, what's going to make you angry, how can you control said emotions. If you can control your emotions, and if you can take that trauma, like I said, or that pain point in your life, and you can turn that into a positive, that makes us extremely resilient. And I think the problem in today's society is a lot of us, we're more resilient than we think. We don't believe in ourselves. We lose hope. We scroll on Instagram. We see all these healthy, happy people, and you want to look like them or be like them. And you have to have some form of self-worth to be able to create a more resilient you.
What's been the hardest part about all this to you, or what's been the most difficult?
Honestly, I think just loving myself. Like, you have to love yourself more and appropriate before you can love anybody else. If you can't take care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, how can you be in a relationship with somebody else and take care of somebody else and be with somebody else and be the best version for them? So just learning to love myself and learn what makes Coach Rob tick and who I am and why I am and what my purpose is. That's always the hard part because we all, even me as a coach, sometimes you look in the mirror and you may not like what you see. So you have to be able to deal with that head on and then fix those things.
I agree with that. I always tell people, you can't really trust or love anyone if you don't love yourself because they can't return it back. I've
Definitely.
seen so many people that get mistreated, and I'm like, well, you need to be happy for yourself because then when they get mistreated, they feel like they're not worth it, they're not worthy
Yeah,
anymore.
definitely.
And I tell them all the time, that's not true.
Yeah, I like that. I actually had a female on my last episode. It hasn't released yet, but she is a personal coach like I am, and she grew her strength from the way she was treated in her relationship. And she talks a little bit about exactly what you said, not really having self-worth. And she didn't realize that the things that happened to her, it wasn't her fault. She just had to build up her self-worth and realize that she had to love herself more than anybody else.
What's been some of your biggest inspirations?
Just the people I look up to as actors. I've always loved Dwayne The Rock Johnson just because I think his character speaks for himself. He's someone that takes the time out to speak to his fans. He always has that mindset of like never quitting and never giving up. David Goggins and Jocko Willink, who are both Navy SEALs. I look up to the Navy SEALs and the Navy SEAL community for everything they had to go through with their training to be who they are. And just anybody else that I come across that may say, hey, Coach Rob, I like what you're doing and I think you're going to change lives, or just, I'm a kind person, man. You have to give kindness. I think that the world has enough hate as it is. And just being a kind person and having a service mindset and having these open conversations like this is a powerful thing. And I think if more people did that, we would be in a much better place in society.
I always talk about my mental health journey as well because a lot of, and particularly guys, and I've said this on my podcast, that men tend to bottle up their emotions
Definitely.
because they think that if they share it with the universe and they share it with someone, it shows that they're weak. And you have to
Right.
have this persona and fake image that we're tough and that we have tough skin. And that's not true most of the time. So I've told about my depression and my anxiety journey a lot with people. I think I share a little bit too much sometimes, but it helps.
I
It
think it's
kind of
healthy.
helps them open up. Like when I've done group therapy, it kind of helps them open up a little bit more for how much I share. And even some of my friends, they said that they really do appreciate like some of the stuff that you say because it's stuff that I've related to as well.
That's awesome. And I think that's one of the stigmas I'm trying to break across the board, regardless of who you are, is that as men, you put the head on the nail, so to speak. We get so caught up in what is our wife gonna think, what is our partner gonna think, what is our work gonna think, and it's okay to not be okay. Like people have to realize that we all deal with stuff on a day-to-day basis. Life is not easy for most people. And if someone's with you and you're in a relationship or it's your friend and they say, hey, are you okay? As men, if we say I'm good, most of the time that means we're not good. And so learn to, I mean, maybe not poke and prod, but be like, look, bro, like, or look, my love or my partner, whatever, I'm here to help. Nothing is off the table. You tell me what you need, and I will support you the best way that I can.
For people that want to check you out and look more into what you do, where can they all find you at?
They can literally find me probably anywhere by just putting in Battlefitted. My website is battlefittedbrand.com, but Instagram, where I'm most prevalent, it's Battlefitted, LinkedIn, Coach Rob, everything, Twitter, TikTok, everything is just at Battlefitted. So
I'm looking on your website, y'all. Y'all could get a gift card. Y'all could get a gift card. Rob, I really appreciate you for being on today, and for my listeners, as I always say, I'll put all the links down below. I'll put all your social media
cool.
accounts in the description box. So if you want to come back to this and check them out at a later time, they'll be there. I'll put his links for the podcast website, his social media platforms down there. So you'll have everything, and as well, his website will be down there as well. Rob, I really appreciate you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the conversation and opportunity to speak.
Thank you. That was my conversation with Mr. Robert Wheeler, and that was such a great conversation to be held. He is so awesome. He was such an delight to have on the show. So I wanted to also say one last time thank you for him for being on the show. If you, as I said in the episode, all of his information will be down below in the description box. I'll put all of his social media platforms down there, so everything you need to know about him will be down there. If you want to check me out, our Lethal Venom podcast on Instagram and TikTok, Facebook is Noah's Podcast, YouTube is Noah's Podcast. Just go on there, search me, find me, or type in the podcast name, and it should pop up. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. It's on all the major platforms. If wherever you're listening to the podcast now, it's available. But just to name some others: Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, Pandora, YouTube, Amazon Music, and some other platforms as well. That's all on there, ready to go and ready to listen. If you wanted to send me an email about future ideas or just have any inquiries or questions, lethalvenompod@gmail.com. Just let me know what you're emailing about so I can help you. Well, damn, I just lost a lot of words there. If you can pinpoint what you need help with, I'll make sure so I don't have to just do like a guessing game. I think that's everything that I wanted to say. I have 2 other podcasts, Southern Reads, but a podcast where I talk about books. If you're a reader, love to read and everything, you're more than welcome to go check that out. It's available on all the platforms I listed, and as well as Music Talks. It's another podcast I have. It's a music-based show where I talk basically anything music. If you like music, know someone that does, highly recommend check that out. It's on the same platforms as well, and everything will be listed in my Linktree link. I will post that link in the description box where you find all the podcast information there on one website. I do appreciate you guys for listening. Hope y'all stay safe out there, and y'all have a good rest of your day, week, and I will see you guys in the next episode of Lethal Venom.